Since 1969, man has made leaps and bounds in the direction of space exploration. Not only have we landed on the moon and discovered remnants of water canals on Mars, we have also gone as far as to launch a probe 628.3 million kilometers away to discover the curious nature of Europa, which just so happens to be a moon capable of alien life. But what is the overall purpose of space exploration, and why is it necessary to ensure that humankind does not eventually die out? Well, whether you're a scientist at heart or just want to know more about the reasons behind our fixation in other worlds, stay right where you are, as we're about to explore everything there is to know about space exploration and why it's important to us. So strap yourselves in and get ready for a bumpy ride, as things are about to get interesting. But before we get into it, make sure to leave a like and subscribe with notifications on so you don't miss out on any of the new videos we post. The demise of humanity. While the reasons for space exploration may be many, as we'll discuss in a little while, there's no doubt that a vocal few have been making themselves heard over the last few decades by speaking out against the activity. And it goes without saying that we wouldn't be giving the topic justice if we didn't at least mention the basis for their overall opinion that space exploration will essentially lead to the fall of humanity. You see, space exploration costs a lot of money, with the annual space budgets of many countries being in the trillions. In comparison to the military budgets of these countries, this honestly isn't that much. But to the average Joe that earns a couple of dollars an hour, it sure does sound like a waste when thought of in such brash terms. But it's not just the financial cost of space exploration that is said to be a negative effect of continuing the practice. It goes without saying that the Earth is slowly dying. Our population has greatly increased over the last couple of years and is looking to grow exponentially in the coming decade, unless some kind of intervening force shows up to change this. Not like we would actually want a disaster to metaphorically cull the herd, as we love our brothers and sisters from across the globe. But we have to understand the gravity of the situation. As the population grows, so does the demand for food, electricity, water, and other necessary resources. And as this demand increases, so does the amount of anthropomorphic carbon dioxide in the air, increasing the greenhouse effect and changing the world for the worse. Slowly but surely, the Earth as we know it is dying from the effect of climate change. And it unfortunately looks like there is nothing we can do to stop it, as the majority of this effect comes from multi-billion-dollar companies that only care about their bottom line. Think of China, for example, which is considered to be one of the most overpopulated countries in the world and sends out more than double the amount of pollution than any of its neighbors. Yet, China refuses to sign any international law treaties to put a limit on just how much carbon dioxide it sends into the atmosphere. And don't misunderstand where we are coming from here, as other countries are just as bad. The United States, for example, may be a signatory of similar treaties now that Trump is no longer president, but their greenhouse gas emission is still absolutely through the roof. It's tough to defeat capitalism after all. So as the argument of this vocal few goes, we shouldn't be spending trillions of dollars on the exploration of a universe we don't need to understand when the Earth obviously needs our help. Why find a new place to live when we can just fix our home world and go from there? And if you put it in simple terms like that, it's pretty difficult to argue with this position, essentially coming to the conclusion that spending vast amounts of money on space exploration is resulting in the demise of humanity. But let's look at some reasons as to why space exploration is absolutely necessary if our human race is to survive in the coming days. Number 1. The colonization of other planets. Leaning on the argument that is proposed by the other side, it sure does seem as if the Earth is in a bad space right now. There's no doubt that we have been greedy, and according to the calculations of some really smart people, there may be nothing we can actually do to stop the process of global warming any further, with demand for fossil fuel burning practices being on the rise. It feels like the only way we can actually improve the situation is by getting rid of a vast number of our population. But rather than doing this in true Thanos style, scientists have thought about the colonization of other planets or moons in our solar system which are or once were capable of life. And while we understand that this may require some or other kind of terraforming, which could instead be used on Earth, that would be treating the symptom, not the cause of global warming, splitting the entirety of humanity between 2 or 3 planets would, on the other hand, be treating the actual cause. And it goes without saying that once this feat has been accomplished, Earth can begin a process of healing, possibly even with the help of humanity's terraforming abilities. But in order to accomplish this task, space exploration is most definitely a necessity. How else are we supposed to find planets that are capable of life after all? And as we mentioned earlier, space exploration has actually given us some pretty important pieces of information since the activity was kicked into overdrive after reaching the moon. By sending that little probe to Europa, for example, we discovered that beneath the icy crust of this moon of Jupiter is liquid water, which appeared to be impossible considering how far Europa is from the sun. This caused us to learn farther that Europa is actually heated by the the gravitational pull of Jupiter, the largest planet in our solar system. Before this, it was thought that only planets such as Earth, which exists in the so-called Goldilocks zone of a solar system, could support life. But since this was far from the case when it came to Europa, our search was widened. Rather than having to look for a needle in a haystack, we now have the option of searching for 2, maybe even 3 needles at the same time. And that's one of the reasons why we explore. Number 2, we need raw materials that Earth cannot provide. Another huge reason behind space exploration has to do with the needs of humanity. It's the very same reason why all those years ago explorers sailed across the 7 seas to find new lands to colonize and spices to take advantage of. It goes without saying that there are various resources out there in space, ranging from precious materials such as gold and platinum to useful gases such as helium-3, which is used for certain MRIs and can act as a safer fuel for nuclear power plants of the future. In the broader spectrum of the universe, or even the solar system, Earth is nothing but a speck. So it shouldn't surprise you to hear that there are far more resources out there than Earth has to offer us. And since it is the mining of these resources on Earth that is adding to the slow death of our home, it goes without saying that the mining of asteroids instead makes a lot more sense. We have also come to discover that the moon is made up of the same elements as Earth, leading many astrophysicists to believe the theory that it was actually once a part of our homeland. This means that asteroids mining is not the only option available to us. In fact, there is evidence to suggest that the moon also possesses a massive amount of helium-3, which is so rare on Earth that is currently being sold for around $5,000 a liter. So if we want to take care of the growing demand of humankind but don't want to hurt our home planet any further, this does seem to be an incredible opportunity to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. As horrible as that expression may be, and space exploration is really the only way that we can find these opportunities that are waiting for us to grab them. Number 3, the accomplishment of a unified goal. Everything we have mentioned so far is important for the Earth and humanity in general, rather than specific countries. This means that space exploration is something that our brothers and sisters from across the globe all agree with, allowing people from the world over to work in close proximity with one another towards the achievement of a common goal. And while this may feel like a bit of a cop-out as far as the reasons go, humanity has found that it needs a common enemy or problem to come together. Otherwise, we just end up dividing ourselves into groups and attacking one another like children. And since space exploration is one of the only activities available to us that sees countries actually working together, we believe that it's important to keep at it. Look at the International Space Station, for example, which is used by astronauts and scientists from all across the globe to share information and work towards a common goal of success. That's the way we should be working regardless, but unfortunately, things aren't that simple when back on Earth. Number 4, our need to explore leads to innovation. Last but not least, our desire to explore appears to be innate within our minds. Just look at how curious and adventurous children are, and you'll see precisely what we mean. And luckily for the rest of humanity, our need to know more about the broader universe has resulted in more innovation than you could ever imagine. In fact, if it wasn't for the space race to get to the moon, we wouldn't have discovered the incredible nature of computational power. And without a solid understanding of how computers work, we would have been left without the invention of laptops, digital appliances, and even smartphones. There is a very long list of gadgets, materials, and processes that were originally developed for the United States space program that have now found an application on Earth, making our lives so much better in the long run. A great example of material would be the creation of a plastic coated with metallic reflecting agent, which, when used as a blanket, reflects around 80% of a user's body heat back into them. This material is now being used to care for victims of accidents and hypothermia, saving lives as the days go by. So, as it turns out, space exploration is not only necessary to find another home, but to improve our everyday lives as well. But what do you think? Feel free to let us know in the comment section down below.